Now let us look at the formation of Nyasaland African Congress. Remember, we looked at the nationalistic movements. We looked at the Native Association, and there was the Nyasaland African Congress, and there was the Malawi Congress Party, the three things. So we are going to look at these things individually. We have looked at the Native Associations, how they were formed, their weaknesses and their importance. We have looked at them. Now we are going to the second movement, a nationalist movement, and that was the formation of the Nyasaland African Congress. So let's focus on this one. The idea of forming the National Association to present African views originated with James Frederick Sangara. James Frederick Sangara. So in 1943, Frederick Sangara formed the Nyasaland African Council. What was the aim of Nyasaland African Council? To stand up for Africans' interests and demands, to present Africans' needs to the colonial government, and also to fight racial segregation. So those were the major three aims of forming the Nyasaland African Council. The council drafted its constitution under the guidance of Levi Ziriro Mumba. In 1944, a nationwide conference was convened in order to discuss and adopt the constitution. During the conference, Levi Mumba suggested that Nyasaland African Council should change its name to Nyasaland African Congress. The president of the party was Levi Mumba, and his deputy was Charles Madinga. Then Nyasaland African Congress was formed in 1944. Nyasaland African Congress was formed with its aims to represent Malawian views to the colonial government. So we have to look at that to know about it. Formed with the idea of Sangara, Frederick Sangara. Factors that led to the formation of the Nyasaland African Congress. Number one, the idea of to amalgamate the British Central African territories. As the idea of amalgamation of the British Central African territories was gaining grounds, there was an increased need for a united voice against the colonial government. People hated the amalgamation of Northern Rhodesia, Southern Rhodesia, and Nyasaland. So when it was like now that idea was coming into establishment, then that time now Africans or in Nyasaland, they wanted to voice out more to say no, we don't want this. We want Nyasaland to stand on itself. Another one was the fear for racial segregation policies. They feared the racial segregation policies that were taking place in Southern Rhodesia there. So the government accepted that the colored community be allowed to set up separate schools for themselves. Africans feared that the segregation policies of Southern Rhodesia would soon come to Malawi. So they feared those segregation policies to say, no, we don't want other people to be treated separately unlike others. And another factor was the failure by Native associations to address African grievances. So the Native associations failed to deal with the particular problems of Tangata, labor migration, education, and many others. So because of concentrating on district or regional issues, so Sangara saw a need to form a national body that could unite Africans and foster interests. or African interests. So we see to it there was nothing like those native associations. For example, the Kalonga Native Associations could not talk of the people of Nkatabe, the people of Blantyre, whatever. They were just concentrating on their issues in Kalonga. So that's what prompted Sangala to say, no, we need to carry all the grievances, the common problems of Malawians to the colonial government so that it hears what are our problems. So failure by native associations to address the African grievances. What were the aims? The aims of the Nyasaland African Congress, the NAC? To be the mouthpiece of Africans by presenting their views and needs to the colonial government. So they wanted to be the representative of Africans to the colonial government, and also to resist the imposition of Federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland, to say no union of Rhodesia and Nyasaland, to foster nationalism in Nyasaland, to again to make sure that people, they fight for their independence, and again to take over education system from the missionaries. They wanted to say no, education systems has to be managed by Africans, to look into the problems such as market facilities, wages, and agriculture, and also to allow English to be the language of instruction in schools at all levels. So it was hoped that such a policy would increase opportunities for Africans in different areas. So they were also emphasizing on the same. So the Nyasaland African Congress leadership by 1944. The chairman or president, Levi Serilo Mumba. Vice President, Charles J. Matinga. And the secretary, Charles Mlanga. Vice Secretary, John Dixon Piri. Second, Vice Secretary General Hale Tungande. The Treasurer General Isaac or Isa MacDonald Rollins. Assistant Treasurer General H.B. Dalla. So we see to it they had that leadership by 1944 in the Nyasaland African Congress. Other leading personalities in the formation of the Nyasaland African Congress was James Frederick Sangala, as we have said. He was the proprietor. And Louis Mataka Bandawe, Charles Chidongo Chinura. Frederick did not take a position despite being the founder because he was a civil servant. So we see to it that the idea started with Frederick Sangala, but he did not take part to be maybe in those positions because he was a civil servant. He was employed by the colonial government. So it was bad. It was not allowed. The constitution could not allow a civil servant to form a separate, like a political party, a political grouping. So that's why Frederick Sangala, who was maybe to be the president, he did not take part, but he was supporting underground to say, I am behind you. This is my idea. I am all behind you, guys. Let's go on. So all those people, they were supporting it. So you see to it, sometimes you have to humble yourself and empower others on for the betterment of the country. So we have to salute James Frederick Sangala for that thing. Had it been it was others, they could maybe even leave the job in the government and say, I am going to form a party. He did not do that. He said, no, I earn my living as a civil servant, but I don't support the government. Let me support those people. He was supporting and selling the idea to say, no, let us form this thing like that. So Frederick Sangala, he did a lot. So we have to learn from that. Demands of the Nyasaland African Congress on education. It wanted the government to take over the education system from the mission societies. By then, still by this time, the government did not have schools. All the schools were managed by most of the schools were managed by the missionaries. So it wanted English to be the language of instruction even at the lowest level. So it demanded to say, no, we need to emphasize on English, because once we learn English, then we'll be accepted in any society wherever we go, whether in Africa or outside. So we want our children to start learning English as early as possible. So it demanded that one. So whereby at first it was like they were learning, those people, but their emphasis, they started learning English maybe at the upper levels. So they wanted, no, it has to change. English has to start from the bottom. The role of Dr. Banda in the Nyasaland African Congress. So let's look at Dr. Kamuzu Banda. You have ever heard about Kamuzu Banda. I know you have never seen Kamuzu Banda. Died in 1997, and you were born around the 2000, way ahead. So Dr. Kamuzu Banda, the first president of Malawi. So let's look at his role during this time when there was the formation of the Nyasaland African Congress. What did he do? He contributed advice to the party. He was outside by then, but he was advising how to do it. And he contributed money to the party. You see, there are those treasurers, whatever, what money could they keep? So some of the money they were keeping was donated. It was contributed by Dr. Banda. And what were the problems that were faced by the Nyasaland African Congress? Death of its leaders, Lev Mumba and Isaac Lawrence, died in 1945. So this created leadership problems. So, and again, there were internal quarrels in the party. So differences emerged between Charles Chinua, the successor of Lev Mumba, and Charles Matinga, his vice. Also, the Congress had financial problems. It did not have enough money to finance its operations. Mind you, it was a national thing. Therefore, they needed to travel to address people in different places, but they did not have money to support their operations. The party lacked support of the masses as it remained on the issue of self-government. And again, tribalism affected the work of the Congress. Charles Matinga was a Yawe and was very tribalistic, to say the leader was the who took over Charles Chinua. He was a northerner, like a Tumbuka. Then Matinga a Yawe. Then themselves, they could not work together due to tribalistic feelings. To say, ayawo inu, atumbuka inu, like that. Things like those, they did not work. They did not work to the betterment of their operations. And the Congress did not have full-time staff to run party affairs. Instead, the party relied on civil servants who were unable to meet frequently. So the party did not have full-time workers and relied on the civil servants. It was highly dominated by the educated Africans who sidelined the local masses. So remember, just as we said on the UGCC in Ghana, the same with NAC, most of the people who dominated the work were the educated people. As a result, the masses, however, they were uneducated, hence they were sidelined. Factors. Let us look at the factors. What were the factors that stimulated the NAC to political activities? Factors that stimulated the NAC to political activities during the 1950s. Number one was the colonial agricultural policies. So the NAC, Nyasaland African Congress, turned into a mass party, a political party, because of the campaign against colonial agricultural policies. For instance, Malimidwe system. It was a system whereby the colonial government wanted to enforce methods of farming and conservation, such as making ridges and drains. However, although the idea was good, but the ways in which these ideas were enforced, they were very bad. As a result, the people resented and hated the colonial rule. So colonial agricultural policies, that one changed the activities of the NAC. now into a political party to say, no, what this government is doing now is bad. They introduced that Malimidwe system, like the making of ridges. Earlier on, Africans were not constructing the ridges when farming, not making those ridges. So the government came up with the system of making ridges. So they wanted all the people to do that. But the system or the method which they took in order to teach the people that one, it was not good. Hence, the people, they hated that one, say no. Much as the method is good, but the farming method is good, but the system that you have taken now in order to introduce it to us is not good at all. So we hate the system, we hate even you, we don't want you now, we are going to do it our own way. The Young Turks educated young men and women, so they formed the Young Turks. The situation changed in the mid-1950s with the emergence of young educated people who joined the Nyasaland African Congress. So these people included Henry Masauko Chipembere, Kanyama Chiume, Tama Dillon, Thomas Banda, Dunduzu Chisiza, Yatuta Chisiza, also known as the Young Turks. So they named themselves the Young Turks. The Young Turks were radical in approach to the colonial government. They were ready to use violent means to force the government to bring changes. So their aim was self-government for Malawi. So they aimed at attaining self-government for Malawi. That is the Young Turks. The young people came in now with full force. They joined the Nyasaland African Congress after they saw to it that the Nyasaland African Congress, yes, they are representing the views of Malawians, but they were not doing it vigorously. So they came in with full force. That's why we are saying that they were radical in their approach. They were ready to use the violent means in order to force the government to change the policies. So the Congress adopted a national flag and a slogan, meaning dawn on the insistence of the Young Turks. So they adopted the national flag now and the slogan, meaning the dawn on the insistence of the Young Turks. In 1956, the five members of the Nyasaland African Congress included James Chinyama, Kanyama Chiume, Masauko Chipembere. They were elected to the Legislative Council. So the two aggressively attacked the Federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland and other issues such as the racial discrimination and neglect of rural areas. So when these young people were included in the parliament then they attacked badly the federation. They did not want that federation and other discrimination issues. The name Young Turks was adopted from a radical Young Turks movement which overthrew the corrupt and oppressive government of Sultan Abdul Hamid II in 1908 in the Turkish Empire in Turkey. So the Young Turks of Malawi, they adopted their name from the Turkish Empire, whereby the Young Turks there in Turkey, they overthrew the leader. So they adopted that one to say, now we're adopting the name Young Turks because we want to do away with the colonial government. So that's where they adopted the Young Turks name. Imposition of the Federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland. So the imposition of Federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland in October 1953 led to the rise of nationalism in the country for a number of reasons. Number one, the opposition to the federation unified all or brought Africans together in their anti-colonial feelings. So many people relied behind the National African Congress or the Nyasaland African Congress in its campaign against the federation. So the Congress organized strikes, boycotts, and payment of taxes. So consequently, in 1953, the riots broke out across the country because people, they rioted against the imposition which was just put in place to say, now we have put together Rhodesia and Nyasaland. Hence people immediately in Nyasaland, they reacted to that, say, no, we don't want that. So there were riots and boycotts all over the country because of that. The return of Kamuzubanda to Nyasaland. Mind you, we are looking at the factors that made the Nyasaland African Congress to be a political party. We started by looking at agriculture. Because of that agriculture, we looked at that one. So also we looked at the emergence of the young Turks that we have looked at. Yeah. So here we are looking at the return of Kamuzubanda to Nyasaland. Also, it made the Nyasaland African Congress to be made into a full political party. So what did Kamuzubanda do? The arrival of Kamuzubanda, Hastings or Dr. Hastings Kamuzubanda in 1958 stimulated the political activities of NAC. So Dr. Banda did several things in which he helped the party transform into a mass political movement. So what did he do? Number one, he toured the whole country where he addressed mass rallies. In his speeches, he condemned the federation and the Malimidwe system. The Congress employed full-time staff and organized secretaries for all districts and the provinces in the country. On his insistence, each branch of the Congress included the Women's League, organized by Rose Chiwambo, and the Youth League. So this was done to involve the ordinary masses into the nationalistic struggle. So we see to it that when he came in, he organized the activities, the political activities of the Nyasaland African Congress to say, now we need to include everyone, to involve everyone. That's why women were formed. The Women's League, it was formed. Initiated by Rose Chiwambo. And the Youth League, it was also there, so that all the angles, all the dimensions of people are included into the political activities of fighting against the colonial government. Now let us look at the roles. What were the roles? The roles of prominent political figures in the struggle for Nyasaland's independence. Number one, Kamuzubanda. He financed the activities of Nyasaland African Congress. He helped to transform Nyasaland African Congress into a mass political movement after 1958, when he came in 1958. He led the nationalist struggle. And the second one is Rose Chiwambo. Rose Chiwambo organized women's wing in the Nyasaland African Congress. So we see to it, Rose Chiwambo, a woman there, he played a vital role to organize women as also to take part in the fight against the struggle. Now, apart from Rose Chiwambo Kamuzubanda, there was also Otton Chirwa. He was a lawyer and founded the Malawi Congress Party. He was the founder of Malawi Congress Party together with Aleke Banda. He was the interim leaders of the Malawi Congress Party. So he was influenced. He also influenced the colonialists to release Nyasaland political detainees in 1960. So we see to it, even Dr. Banda in 1959, he was arrested. And Otton Chirwa, he fought hard to say, no, you have to release these people from prison, because when they were arrested, they were sent to prison, because that time it was the time of a federal government. Northern Rhodesia, Southern Rhodesia, and Nyasaland. So when Dr. Banda and others, they were arrested, they were sent to prison in Zimbabwe, in Gweru, in Zimbabwe. The reason was that it was a federal government. So you can be sent to any prison within the federal government. So that's why they were sent there. So Otton Chirwa He fought hard to say, no, you have to release Dr. Banda and others, those who have arrested. Dunduzi Chisiza, as the Secretary General of Nyasaland African Congress, he planned activities for the operation of the party that led to the independence of Nyasaland. So Dunduzi Chisiza, he was the Secretary General. So he planned those activities to say, yes, we need to be independent. Kanyamachume, he used his position in the Legislative Council to criticize the Federation and other colonial policies. Together with Masauko Chipembere, they invited Dr. Banda to lead the nationalistic struggle. So we see to it that when Kanyamachume and his friends, the Masauko Chipembere, they were incorporated into the parliament there. They were so vibrant there that they were speaking against the federation. And it was them, Kanyamachume, Masauko Chipembere, who invited Dr. Banda from abroad to say, come here so that you lead us in the struggle for independence. So when Dr. Banda came in, that's when he toured the whole country, and immediately he was arrested and sent to Gweru prison. So we see to it that these were some of the prominent figures who did a lot in the struggle for independence. And Henry Masauko Chipembere, we have mentioned him already. He was the one who founded the Young Turks movement that promoted violence to scare the colonialists in order to grant Africans immediate independence in Nyasaland. So he embarked on a program of recruiting the rural masses into the Nyasaland African Congress. And he used his position in the Legislative Council to attack the colonial government, just as it was with Kanyamachume. He wrote Dr. Banda in Kumasi, that is in Ghana, to return home and lead the nationalist government or nationalist struggle. So it was him, Masauko Chipembere, in his handwriting, who wrote a letter in agreement with others, the Kanyamachume and others. They wrote him to say, come back from. By then, Dr. Banda was in Ghana. So there, then, he was written a letter to say, come back here and lead us in the struggle against the nationalist movements.